storm came down from the mountains like a living thing, howling, clawing, swallowing the land whole, and not a soul in the territory could remember a winter wind that cut so deep into bone and memory alike. Elias Crow had lived through 37 winters on the frontier, buried friends, buried enemies, buried parts of himself. Yet as he guided his horse through the whitening blur of snow, he knew this storm was different. The sky was the color of iron, the kind that promised no mercy, and the trail he followed vanished beneath, drifting white like it had never existed at all. Elias was supposed to be heading home, to his cabin near the river, to a fire and a bottle and silence, but something tugged at him, an unease he had learned to respect after years of blood and bad luck. His horse snorted, refusing another step. When Elias saw it, a dark shape near a twisted cottonwood, barely visible through the storm. At first he thought it was a fallen animal. Then the shape moved, and he realized it was a woman, pressed against the tree, her body shielding a small child from the screaming wind. Elias dismounted slowly, hand instinctively hovering near his revolver, not from fear of them, but from the habits the Wild West carved into men like scars. The woman's eyes locked onto him, sharp, defiant, exhausted. She was Apache, that much was clear in her features, her braids stiff with ice, her shawl soaked and heavy with snow. The child in her arms could not have been more than 3 years old. Lips blue, eyes too big for such a small face, watching Elias with a silence that hurt more than crying would have. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The wind did all the talking, roaring its threats, promising death to anyone foolish enough to linger. Elias knelt, lowering himself, so he would not seem like another danger in a world that had already given them too many. He saw the fear there, yes, but also something else, resolve. The fierce kind born in mothers who have nothing left to lose, except the life clutched against their chest. He offered his canteen, and after a hesitation that felt like an eternity, she accepted, letting the child drink first. Her name, she said finally, was Nita. The child was Taza. They had been fleeing, she did not say from what, but Elias did not need to ask. He had seen burned camps, broken treaties, soldiers who called it duty, and settlers who called it progress. He had also seen what happened to women and children left alone in storms like this. Elias knew he could still turn back, still choose the warm lie of survival over the cold truth of doing what was right. But the storm did not care about choices, and neither, it seemed, did his conscience anymore. He wrapped them in his spare blanket, lifting Taza with care that surprised even him, and helped Nita onto his horse. The wind fought them every step of the way as Elias led the horse forward, snow biting his face like needles, his thoughts racing with the dangers ahead. Wolves driven desperate by hunger, soldiers who would shoot first and ask questions never, the simple, brutal math of cold versus flesh. Time blurred, minutes stretching into hours, until his legs trembled and his lungs burned. More than once he thought they would not make it, that this storm would take them all and scatter their bones into the white silence. Then, just when hope began to feel like another cruel trick, the dark shape of his cabin emerged from the storm, a promise made of rough wood and stubborn survival. Inside, Elias built a fire with hands that barely worked, stripped off frozen clothes, and wrapped Nita and Taza in warmth. The child finally cried then, a thin, broken sound that meant he was alive, and Elias turned away, blinking hard, pretending it was the smoke in his eyes. As the storm raged outside, 3 lives sat balanced on a knife's edge inside that small cabin, and none of them yet understood how deeply this night would change everything they believed about enemies, mercy, and what it truly meant to survive in the wild. West, if this story already has you holding your breath, make sure you subscribe to the channel now, because what happens next will shock you even more, and you won't want to miss a single second. Morning did not come gently. It arrived like a reckoning, the storm finally spent but leaving behind a world buried and silent, as if the land itself were holding its breath after the violence of the night. Elias woke first, his body aching in places he thought long dead, the fire reduced to embers, and the weight of responsibility pressing heavier than any saddle he had ever carried. Nita sat awake near the hearth, Taza asleep against her, watching Elias with eyes that measured truth the way frontiersmen measured distance, by instinct, not words. Outside, the snow lay deep enough to swallow a man to the waist, And Elias knew that staying put was as dangerous as moving. He also knew that when the storm cleared, others would be out there. Patrols, bounty hunters, men who saw Apache lives as obstacles rather than people. Nita spoke then quietly, telling him what the storm had interrupted. Her village had been attacked at dawn days earlier, not by soldiers in uniform but by men wearing stolen coats and calling it justice. Her husband had fallen, buying her time to run. She had walked for days, hiding, carrying Taza until her strength failed beneath that cottonwood tree. Elias listened without interruption, the weight of every word settling into him like lead. He had once ridden with men like the ones she described, men who blurred the line between law and cruelty until there was no line left at all. The realization burned hotter than the fire ever could. When Elias told her soldiers would come, that staying meant death or worse, Nita did not plead or cry. She only nodded, already braced for the next trial. They left the cabin before the sun climbed too high, Elias leading them toward a canyon few knew well, a place where sound died and tracks vanished among stone and shadow. Every step felt watched, every distant echo like a rifle cocking. Halfway through the canyon, the sound came, voices, boots on snow, the unmistakable jangle of spurs. Elias pushed Nita and Taza into a narrow crevice, pressing himself in front of them, revolver drawn, heart hammering so loud he was sure it would give them away. The men passed close enough that Elias caught their words, laughing about the savages they would finish off before nightfall. Rage surged through him, old and new colliding, but he stayed still, letting them pass like a bad dream. When silence returned, Elias understood something he had avoided his entire life. Neutrality was a lie. You either stood between cruelty and the helpless, or you stood aside and let it happen. By nightfall they reached a ridge overlooking open land where Apache smoke signals once rose. It was abandoned now, but safe enough for a moment. Nita thanked him then, not with tears but with a strength that carried more weight than gratitude ever could. Elias realized he had not rescued them to be a hero. He had done it because some part of him needed redemption more than he needed safety. As he turned back toward the trail, knowing he could never return to the quiet life he once wanted, Taza reached out with small, steady fingers and touched his coat, a simple gesture that struck Elias harder than any bullet. In that moment, he understood the truth the Wild West never taught in books or legends, that survival without humanity was just another kind of death. And as the sun set over a land scarred by violence yet still alive with possibility, 3 lives moved forward, forever changed by a single choice made in a deadly storm. If this story moved you, surprised you, or made you see the Wild West in a new way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel right now, because more powerful, untold stories like this are coming. And you won't want to miss what happens next.